Now you should be able to hear me, hopefully.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Okay, so let me restart. Early this year, I had this presentation which was named Austria's 2024 dip in EV adoption. We had about 6% decline in EV adoption last year. But I stated that from my understanding, 2025 will be quite different. And you might remember some of the charts, and I'll go back to some of those and check with reality if it really changed. So one of the slides that I showed you is that I expected that the revised emission targets for 2025 in Europe will force manufacturers to dramatically increase their share of EVs from 16 back in 2023 up to almost double of that in 2025. And I've brought the latest figures from Austria. And as you can see, the third line here is battery electric vehicles. And we jumped from 60% share of new registrations to 20, and it's an increase of 31%. So 1/3 more cars. You can see the actual numbers. We had 6,000 in January and February of last year, and now we have 8,000 this year. And overall, the market is not growing very much. It's growing about 6-7%. You can see that diesel is declining heavily, and battery electric vehicles is the one powertrain that's growing the most. Then you might remember that I said there's actually an artificial price gap between combustion engines and battery electric vehicles of the same brand. And sometimes you can see it was 60% and 50% more. And my expectation was that car brands will lower the prices to meet the emission targets. And I showed you this chart back then where VW jumped down from 36,900 to 20,900 already in December. And just this month, this is what's happening with Hyundai in Austria. As you can see, the Kona has been dropped by 30%, quite a massive drop. The Ioniq 6 has been dropped 24%, and the Ioniq 5 has been dropped 12% just this year. So the price drop is still happening and is continuing to happen in Austria. The third prediction I made is that affordable cars will become plentiful this year. And I was expecting that many buyers will consider buying those cheaper cars. And the reality check for that is the most selling car in February in this year was the Renault R5. This is a car that just came on the market, so it's a standing start to the top of the chart. The other remarkable thing that you can see on this chart is, as in many European countries, Tesla is declining heavily. So you can see they declined 75%, so from 680 units in February last year to only 166 units this year. And normally we have the top spot that we normally had was around here was about 20% for the top participant. And this time around, you can see that it's more balanced. So the share of new EVs in Austria is more evenly distributed. And you can see 60% is in the other category. And even all the others are still growing at a rate of 22%. So let me just go back to this chart. So just imagine that Tesla have been flat this year. We would not grow 27% in February. We would grow 40 or 45% in February. So it's quite remarkable that despite the significant drop of Tesla in BEV registrations in Austria, we're still growing overall 30% by the end of February year to date. And I also pulled a chart of the top BEV brands that were registered in Austria. And you can see that almost everybody is growing very strongly. So BMW is not growing strongly, but still a very strong brand. and the only brand in decline in the top 10 is Tesla at the moment. And we all know that one of the big reasons why Tesla is declining is the change of the Model Y, where the old model has no longer been sold in the first couple of weeks, and they have started to start delivery of the new Model Y. So that all looks like my prediction that I had earlier is coming to fruition. So it's actually happening. So prices are dropping and sales are increasing. But there is headwinds ahead of us. So one is that the EU is in discussion. It's not the law yet, but the EU is in discussion of watering down the reduced emission targets. The discussion is that manufacturers do not need to meet the emission targets just at the end of this year, but they have until 2027 to reach their or to cap their emission targets. So if you're overshooting this year, you still have 2 years to catch up. So you could, instead of selling 25% BEVs this year, you could just sell maybe 19%, and then next year you sell 30% and 40% in 2027. That's the current discussion. That's not helpful. It's still a proposal. It has not been approved yet, but it looks like it's coming. Then we don't know what the effect of the tariff war is. It can be both positive and negative. So obviously it's negative in terms of incoming cars, but it's also positive in terms of European manufacturer will probably have reduced export rates to the US, and they will look for additional markets in Europe. And we can see that. You have seen some of the price actions already. Also, what's happening in Austria is suddenly the finance ministry has detected as a surprise that our deficit is much larger than they anticipated. They anticipated about 2% deficit, and in reality, it's minus 4.5. So that means it's drastic cut of all the budgets. And one of the first things they did was cutting all the BEV subsidies and reducing some of the tax incentives in Austria. Now, the good thing is we knew that the new government might not continue with the subsidies, and you could reserve your subsidy payment in advance, and now you have 36 weeks of actually getting a BEV. So what happened in January, that all the budget was suddenly consumed, which is good because this budget has been reserved. You can still get the subsidy once it's reserved for you, and you have 36 weeks to actually get the BEV. So I'm anticipating that it will be weeks and months before we see the effect of the subsidies actually being eliminated. But the tax incentives, that actually is starting to happen in April. So today, BEVs will need to pay more taxes in Austria. And that's taxes based on both horsepower and on weight of the BEVs. And for some BEVs, that might amount to 1,000 euros per year. So it's quite a heavy burden. Those that have a smaller motor or a less powerful motor, they are more, so the hit on those cars is smaller. And the other, obviously, uncertainty is we don't know if Tesla's success with the new Model Y will be good. I think it will be a good sales success, but with all the talks about what Elon Musk is doing and his discussion of who you should vote in Germany was not really helpful. On the other hand, if you look at on the bottom, you can see that Tesla Model Y and Model 3 are still on the top charts in Europe for February. So good trend so far, but some headwind ahead. So it remains an interesting topic. And that's it from me. Any questions?
Great.
Are you seeing?
I will. So go ahead. Go ahead, Joel. Sorry.
I'm guessing, if Tesla sales are down 75%, you're seeing some strong political pushback against Tesla in Austria. I mean, in the US now, we're starting to see really weirdly enough, we've been wondering when the pushback to sort of the Trump administration would start to materialize, and it seems to be it's materializing with Tesla. Like we're seeing pretty consistent protests against Tesla at showrooms and stuff, and that's kind of how the resistance to Donald Trump is kind of manifesting here. I'm wondering if that's kind of the case elsewhere. Tesla sales have fallen in the US, although not nearly as much as they've fallen in Europe. So it sounds like that's
So
kind of
Joel,
a quick
can I jump in?
quick
We'll get to that
pre-announcement.
in 1 second. Just staying with Austria for a minute and your predictions, because you're very good at predictions, Christian. So Model Y is going to be good over the next year?
Yeah, I think so. In answer to Joel's question and your question, John, is there's not really a political protest against Tesla per se. Obviously, there is quite a lot of pushback to what Elon Musk is doing and interfering with European politics. That's not being liked, and there's a strong push. But we do have the same, showroom actions, and we had some. Recently, I think in Rome, 7 Teslas were burned down before a Tesla showroom. And we have those Tesla takedown days where they try to coordinate it across Europe. In Austria, we had a very rainy day, and it was raining cats and dogs all day. So it was a minimum turn up. But anyway, so there is some pushback, and obviously, Tesla owners have a hard time now. People getting asked, "Can you still, uh, what's your take against Elon Musk? Why do you still drive a Tesla?" And you have those discussions, obviously, and you have some risk that your car might get, devastated or might get focus and those kind of things. So it will be interesting, but what I've seen in the early days of the new Model Y delivery, I think everybody that reserved a Model Y or actually bought it in advance, I think they will take delivery. I don't see that declining. It might be more difficult in the used market. So if you have a used Model 3 or a used Model Y, it might be more difficult to get a good price. So in answer to your question, John, I still think that the Model Y will be quite successful or relatively successful. And you have seen that the numbers are now small in Austria, right? The top of the chart has a little bit more than 5% market share on the BEV market because it's now more evenly divided between manufacturers, right? And I'm quite sure that once the Model Y gets the full rollout of the Model Y delivery, they will immediately jump beyond 10%. So they will get the top spot on the chart. And you can see that even without Tesla, we are growing quite massively for the moment. So I'm expecting once Tesla rollout of the Model Y increases, we will hit 30% or we will continue 30-40% growth rates and significantly more than 20% market share of new registrations. That's my expectation. Peter?
Great.
Yeah. Do you see the same trends in other countries in Europe? Like I know you follow Germany as a market. I can say that in Norway we just got the March numbers, and Tesla Model Y is back on top. They delivered 3 times more than the next on the list, Nissan Aria. So it was down in January and February, I think, but for the quarter numbers, it's up again. And do
Yeah.
you see in other European countries the same trends, or?
Yeah, that's what I see, and that's what I expect also. Similar as in Norway, maybe not as strong, but I think they will bounce back quite significantly. By the way, a pre-announcement: we have invited Electric Nick with his detailed analysis for next month, and we will get. And I've asked Nick to also focus a little bit on what's happening to Tesla in last year and how does that relate to this year. So we will have once we are in the May meeting, Electrotechnik will have analyzed the first quarter, and we will get a rundown of Europe and by country. So that will be interesting. Does that answer your question, Peter? Okay, good. Tibor?
Yeah, if we can get back to the new tax, what you have to pay from today in
Yes.
Austria, it's like an insurance tax or something like that, right?
It's an insurance tax. Previously, we had a waiver for the insurance tax, and now we are taxed on two. So two vectors are being taxed. One is the horsepower, the sustained 30-minute horsepower of the car. It's funny, Europe allows two versions of measuring the sustained 30-minute horsepower of a car. One is you measure it for 30 minutes anyway, even if you run out of battery, or you just measure it as long as the battery lasts, and then stop the measurement. Now, obviously, if you only measure it while the battery lasts, you get a higher rating. But if you say the battery runs out, but I continue to measure, then the average obviously gets down significantly. So what that means is Tesla has done the more clever solution. So a Tesla in Austria's registration database, for example, a Model S, S90, has officially a horsepower of only 68, very low, right? Versus a Volkswagen e-Golf has a horsepower rating of 100 kilowatts. Now, obviously, in terms of the horsepower, probably e-Golf pays more on that vector versus a Model S, which doesn't make sense, right? And the other measurement is the weight of the car. So if you have a smaller car like a Renault R5, and it's lighter in weight, then you pay less tax. So you have two parameters that influence the insurance tax.
Yeah, but how does it compare to the tax what ICE owners have to pay? Is it lower or the same?
It really depends. So on average, it's still lower, but it really depends. So if you have a Volkswagen e-Golf, you might it might not look so good. Let me put it that way. So it really depends. But on average, so if the manufacturer did the more clever measurements, so you have the option of measuring it either way, and then it is part of the COC, the Certificate of Conformity, and it's not easy to change it, right? It's the manufacturer when he homologates the car in Europe, he issues the COC, and whatever it states there is now used in the tax measurement. But by and large, it should still be significantly cheaper in terms of taxes for a BEV car. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So let me pass it to John. I think you have a poll lined up for us, and then we're going to go to breakout rooms.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Joel. Yes. So it's kind of a good segue into the next topic we had on the agenda is everything that's going on in the political world. So I hope this works. Good. If people would like to just give us a quick reply, you know, the issue of Teslas and Elon and all of that is playing out, as Joel said, in the US. It's certainly playing out in Canada. And we, as the steering committee, we'd like to know where it is for everybody else. I think something that GEVA can do is provide a global perspective on some of these things, not just about the negatives, but frankly, what we heard today about how Model Y is resurging, you know, is pretty compelling. People, you know, we read in the media that everybody hates Tesla, and yet Teslas are the best-selling vehicle in many parts of the world. So I think we can, you know, if everybody can vote on that. Some of you aren't paying attention because there's still 10 of you that have to vote. Hello, wake up. Cat, are you awake? You're awake. Yeah, I can. You're muted, but you're awake. Yeah. Anyway, so that's great. I'll leave that open if you can vote. And I think that's all for now. You watch for probably next meeting that the steering committee, I hope, will have some recommendations on things that we can do to just to respond on a global basis, because I know, like Christian said, it was raining in Austria, so the protests weren't very dramatic. I can tell you in Vancouver here in Canada, the media talked about protesters swarming the Tesla dealership. And I think when they used those words, there were 12 protesters. So there were more sales staff in the back of the dealership than there were protesters swarming outside. So some of what I hope we can do is add some balance to this kind of highly politically charged discussion. That'll stop being political.
Just quickly as well, John, I heard yesterday, just while we're talking about this, that I think Musk himself might no longer be in the Doge thing by the end of this month, according to what Mr. Trump has put out there publicly. He's got important companies to run, so he wants to get back to that. So maybe things will settle alongside the new Model Y. A lot of the countries that we're based in, if we are getting the Tesla Model Y, we're getting it generally from China. I know they've got the factory in Berlin and in the US as well, but for most international markets. And as far as what I can see, and I know we'll learn a lot more at the next meeting, last week was the highest number of insured Teslas, which means the ones that the Tesla themselves have produced. They produced over 20,000 of them in 1 week. So things are ramping up very, very quickly. So yeah, all we can do is provide a balanced sort of view on it.
No, and that's fine. That's okay.
Great. Okay, we'll see you later.
All right. Thanks as always.